I'm Jonathan Black. I'm Director of the Careers Service. Sustainability pervades everything that we all do. It's one of my challenging questions is, do we need directors of sustainability, or should it be all our jobs? We are absolutely thrilled to have three fabulous speakers tonight, who I'm going to invite to talk. I hope you've read their biographies, so I won't bore you with that, but I have Emma on my right from Nestle, Laurence from our own course here in Oxford, and Jake Backus from Social Entropy. That's right.
No, empathy, sustainability.
Empathy, sustainability. Right, thank you. Well, okay, so let's start. I'm going to invite each of them to give us about 5 minutes. I assume, Chris, can you hear me? Good, okay, so you can hear at the back. There are microphones here, just makes it easier for people. So let's start with about a 5-minute opening statement from each of our panelists, and then we'll open it up to questions. So start thinking about what those questions are going to be. Emma, can I go to you first?
Have you got a question for us, or do you want us to just have a chat?
Well, is there such a thing as a career in sustainability? Is my
Good question. Hi everybody, I'm Emma Keller. I'm the Head of Sustainability for Nestle. It's lovely to be with you today, and I'm really pleased to be breaking up the manel by having a female on stage, so it's very good. So I'll quickly tell you a bit about my career in sustainability, and then I'll try and answer the question. So, I mean, is there such a thing as a career in sustainability? Well, that's very much where my career has gone through. I studied a biology undergraduate, and I thought I was going to be a genetic scientist. Realised I wasn't very good in the lab, wasn't very precise, was much more interested in systems change, so went much more down the ecology route. After that, I did a master's in environmental technology at Imperial, which sounds like it was all about wind farms and tech, but it wasn't. It was much broader. It looked at politics, economics, resource management, system change, lobbying and advocacy, the whole range of different issues. And from them, what I really discovered was that I was really interested in how business could make a change, because business has such a huge environmental impact, as we all know, particularly companies like the one I work for now. So I was really interested in how business could be a force for change. So I then went on to work for a company called Unilever. Does anyone know what products Unilever make? Yeah? Anyone shout out?
Everything.
Everything, pretty much everything. It's like everything from Ben & Jerry's to Persil washing up powders to chocolate bars to all kinds of different things, shampoos. And it was a fascinating place to work. And I was lucky enough while I was at Unilever to be sponsored to do a PhD in sustainability, which was really exciting. And for me, the main reason I wanted to do that was I didn't want to kind of be doing a theoretical PhD that I would then say to business, listen to me, I've got a really good idea. And they're like, whatever. It was really about doing an applied PhD. So I was taking Unilever's data, talking to their supply chain and trying to come up with a solution for how, at the time, Unilever were one of the first companies to say that they were going to double the size of the business and halve their environmental impact. So part of my PhD was looking at how the hell do they actually do that? What do they need to get to that point? So it's a really, really fantastic opportunity. I then got a bit bored of business and thought, actually, I wanted to make a change in a bigger way. So I left Unilever and went and worked for WWF, the World Wildlife Fund, one of the biggest global conservation organizations, where my job there really was to talk to business and to influence business to change government policy. And it was a fascinating experience. I spent about 6 or 7 years there talking to every kind of business, from Nando's to Tesco to Heathrow Airport, to all different businesses, trying to get them to change their environmental policy to be more sustainable. And from there decided, actually, they're not listening to me. They're not listening to me in the way I want them to do. So I'm going to go back into business and try and drive a change from the inside. And that's where I am today, working as head of sustainability for Nestle, really focused on delivering our climate change goals. And I think what I find fascinating, so is there a career in sustainability? Clearly, I've built one, but I'm now building a team in Nestle that doesn't have to have a background like mine, which has been very much in sustainability. I'm employing data analysts, I'm employing marketeers who can tell stories, I'm bringing in engineers, and actually all of those skill sets are really important for a career in sustainability because the topics and the challenges we've got to solve are technical, they're emotional, we've got to change hearts and minds, they're data-driven, we need the science, we need the evidence, but we also need the creatives that can really bring a story to life and can help change consumer behaviour. So I think all skill sets are really relevant in sustainability. And the other big part of my role is trying to convince the whole business that they need to take action, not just leave it to the sustainability team. There was a fascinating report recently done by Kite Insights that surveyed about 8,000 people across 10 different countries, across 15 industries, and nearly 80% of people were saying that they want to do something in their job on climate change. But less than half of them felt able or well able to do so. So a big part of my role is how do I empower and help people across all different walks of the business to do something without having to have the dedicated skill set. So I'll leave it there and we can come back to the discussion a bit later. Thank you.
It's a great challenge. How many people work at Nestle?
So Nestle globally, 290,000 people across 188 countries. So we are everywhere. In the UK and Ireland, we're about 8,000 people.
You've got to help 290,000 people.
Yeah, strong workforce, absolutely.
Great. Laurence.
Well, good evening. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you, and it fills me with great optimism and joy to see so many people here on a random, rainy Wednesday. What's Thursday, isn't it? Goodness, Thursday evening in November. So, I think this is a sign that we are progressing, and the fact that all of you are here tonight to have this conversation regarding sustainability and regarding careers is a very, very good sign. So, I trained as an accountant originally. No offence to accountants, but I realised very quickly it wasn't for me. I went back to doing further study, but I realised that my time inside business, albeit brief, had taught me that I was passionate about the impact that companies were having on the world, and this great paradox of business that you alluded to as being an enormous force for good, but also being an enormous force for harm. I stayed on in academia, primarily driven by my immense interest and passion for all things teaching and learning. And right now I run the MSc program in Sustainability, Enterprise and Environment, where I'm very fortunate to look after 26 wonderful individuals, some of whom I can see in the crowd tonight. This is an interdisciplinary program where we take the lens of markets, finance, business, human nature, and say, for better or for worse, these institutions are why we're in this mess, but again, they're also the way out of it. I think it's a very exciting time for the sustainability profession. This profession, for lack of a better word, is really coming of age now. It's institutionalizing, it's becoming firm, it's becoming real. It is true that sustainability will and has permeated through many jobs. I wouldn't say all jobs, but it really is a facet for many jobs these days. But I still think that we need to have people who are actively driving these changes within organisations. And you alluded to such an eloquent point before around those who change the culture, those who change the story, those who actually bring about the technical solutions to these problems. So there's so many hats to be worn in this role. It's far greater than simply being a chief sustainability officer or a CSR manager. You can have a sustainability career in a number of different facets. Thinking about the skills for this career, there's a growing evidence base of what these skills, what these competencies are. The first of these very much is taking a systems view of the world, understanding the interdependencies between parts in a system, and taking a systems-based view to framing problems. The second of these, it's a bit cliche to say, but very much is leadership. We need transformational leadership. We need people like you who are actually going to change the status quo. The status quo is not going to deliver sustainable development. It's not working at the moment. So we need people who are going to drive that impactful change within organisations towards net zero and sustainable development. Third, we need people with competencies, with qualifications. Most chief sustainability officers at present, their background is holding an MBA, and most of these MBAs are not ones like we have now where sustainability is part of it. We're seeing a generation come through now who are just starting to get into these positions, who hold degrees in environmental science, who hold degrees specifically in sustainability. And I'd encourage you to think about doing a qualification that will actually give you the hard science and the expert power and the legitimacy that comes with being able to walk into a room and know the science of climate change very well, but also understand the nuanced cultural aspects of it is a very, very powerful combination. And I think the final thing is one needs a genuine passion for this work, and I can tell that you certainly have that in all that you do. This can be an emotional career because you're very, very closely attached to the work that you're doing. You can be very, very affected by the outcomes. So I think you need that passion. You need to be able to get close to your work, but you also need to be able to keep a healthy objective distance so that you're not constantly on a roller coaster on that journey. So I'll leave it there, other than just to emphasise what an exciting time it is for this career, and I really commend all of you for taking an interest in having a career in the sustainability space.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've had business and we've had academia. Jake.
Well, I'm also business. I've been accused of being academic, but I'm categorically not. But I think we have good diversity on this team. My original degree was international marketing and Spanish. And then I wondered what I'm going to do with that. But I then became a brand manager, and then I'm sales. I'm sales for Latin America, then the Americas, and then I went to work for Coca-Cola in the global customer team. So I was 16 years at Coca-Cola. So I did not start in a sustainability degree. I was a member of Greenpeace, Oxfam and all that kind of stuff. So I had some interest. So I want to say to you all that even if you don't have all the academic qualifications to work in sustainability, you can. So you can go and find a company that doesn't have anybody doing sustainability and you volunteer for it and they're going to bite your hand off. Great, do your main job. You can do this on the side as well. Then you can get the experience, right, you need to send me on a course. I'm off to Oxford to go and do a course on sustainability. Then your next move can be into a pure sustainability one if you want. But so I was in the global customer team and I worked my way up to commercial leadership manager for Coca-Cola Europe. And I saw a program about melting ice caps and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, I need to change my job. So they said, fine, if you want to do that on the side, you're most welcome. And then I ended up with 2 jobs, but my interest was in the sustainability one, so I was allowed to get into that role. So I created a job which didn't exist. So I created the commercial role for engaging, Coke's largest key customers on environment and sustainability. But I was also able to go to talk to the brand managers and say to them, hey, we need to do more on sustainability. They go, Jake, that's your job. No, let me tell you in your own language, trust, reputation, brand love, all that kind of stuff. The thing is, certainly in the past, and it may be a lot less so now, but given that we haven't acted with this full decisiveness, I really question whether sustainability is in everyone's job description. But big companies, many of them, nobody knows who the sustainability person is. Coke had incredible experts in water, plastics, packaging, refrigeration. Nobody knows who they are. They don't even speak the same language. So if you want to affect change, then you want to be in any position in a company that has a budget, that has a power. Get to be the boss and hold in your heart some values around sustainability and affect change. It almost doesn't matter what job you do. I mean, if you can get into commercial side or marketing or PR or whatever it is, or into government, become a politician, but you can knock for as long as you like on the outside, trying to get, banging the door at Greenpeace, trying to get Coke to change something. It isn't going to happen. So you can affect change from within. So just the global customers that the small team I was in probably had a carbon footprint greater than the United Kingdom. So even though my hand on the tiller of this super tanker was tiny, even 1% change is massive. So you could go and choose the biggest, baddest, ugliest company that you can possibly find and go and affect change from within. But essentially go and do the job that you have studied to do, that you've trained to do, because that's your reason to be there, and then start to say sustainability is important. So I'm a co-founder of the Coca-Cola Green Team, And we said we need to do more to engage staff and employees on sustainability in the Coke London, so UK and Europe. And I did a quick carbon footprint for the office, and we got a budget, and the boss supported it, or the president of Coke Europe supported it, because it all added up to great place to work, to attract and retain talented people. Anyway, so 16 years at Coca-Cola, I then left. I went for a few really big, high-powered jobs to be head of sustainability for global brands for the 4th biggest retailer in the world. But essentially, they said I was too academic and too negative, because I came having done a presentation on Arctic krill and got to me or one other person in front of the directors, because they said, come and future-proof our business. And I explained to them the question about plastics, and they needed to do something about it. And this is what you need to do. But they didn't really want to hear it. Anyway, I dodged a bullet on a massive commute and everything. So I work for myself. I don't need another house. I don't need another car. I just want to save the planet. And so I help companies become beneficial corporations, which means they must. So when I left Coke, they had a new president for Europe. We had 3 priorities: growth, growth, and growth. Like, oh, for Pete's sake, he hasn't understood anything. So ultimately, that sort of, it didn't last very long, thankfully. But essentially, you can't, so legally, companies have to put shareholder value first. So they will cut staff in order to improve the dividend. They will externalize their harms, let society pick up, the plastic waste or whatever it is, because it's good for shareholders. But a beneficial corporation has to consider all of their stakeholders and society and the environment when making key decisions. So I just want to leave I'll stop in a second. I'm a bit of a talker. You need to wave at me. But ultimately, I was always thinking, if I did a good job, I'd get promoted. Somebody woke me up to that misapprehension. It doesn't work that way. I was not a player. I didn't know how to, I didn't do it. But as soon as I changed my job to sustainability, senior people think, wow, this guy really believes this stuff. He's really passionate about it. As soon as I realized I didn't care about my career path, actually it got a lot better. But since I set up my own agency to do what I want to do, I've trained myself. I've been for years to lectures at Oxford University, and the world's experts come here, and all you've got to do is rock up. And you hear about world's experts on water, natural capital accounting, ecosystem services, energy. There's everything here. You get a free education. But I also set up a social enterprise, which is Common Ground Cafe in Little Clarendon Street. I don't know if you know it. Free workspace, stay along. So I'm the co-founder of that. Not anymore. I also did I put together some experts. People are not taking action on climate change. What will connect with them? Let's bring it home. Air quality and air pollution, which is affecting the brain development of their own children. And, if I could show how bad the air quality was around all the schools around Oxford, maybe I could connect with people that way. So I won a DEFRA grant to measure air quality from a human perspective in Oxford. So I don't know anything about air quality research, and it's way more complicated than you ever imagined. But I managed to put together a team of, this is Oxford after all, of real experts to go and get a grant. So I was the glue galvanizing all the people. So the point is, don't wait for people to give you a career in sustainability. Go and join a company, volunteer to set up a green team, volunteer to be the person who does sustainability, go and get yourself a bit of training and get into it that way, or you can go and do some courses and study here at Oxford as well. But there's every route in, because what is the real problem in sustainability? We don't necessarily need more people to tell us what the problem is, because we know about climate change. We pretty much know what to do, and we've got the money to deal with it. The real problem is actually engagement and communication and behavior change. We need people to take this more seriously. Government isn't acting decisively. It doesn't have a mandate from the voters. Businesses would be greener tomorrow if the consumers, shoppers, customers said it was important. So actually, we need people to be advocates and to get change to happen. So you don't necessarily have to be in pure sustainability to make the biggest change. Get in to have a budget, be the boss, and make it happen yourself. And democracy's overrated. Just do it.
Thank you very much. Yes, didn't I read that the air quality in Delhi is so bad that it's taking 11 years off people's lives? I mean, 11 years is significant. It's not like 10 minutes or... Anyway. And there was that installation really, at St. John's College, where they had these, I don't know if you saw it, these pods which simulated the air quality in 4 or 6 cities around the world, that you could go inside and you could breathe the air quality. Well, this is what it's like in Sao Paulo or in Tokyo or whatever, just to bring it home. Right, let's open the floor to you all. There is a roving mic, which Chris has got. So, who'd like to ask a question? At the back, right at the back there, Chris, to your right. And then we'll come to you up here.
Hi, yeah, this is for Dr. Keller, working for Nestle. I wondered, how do you find working in a sustainability organisation, in a sustainability role in an organisation that kind of, their core thing is to sell things to people and to kind of reinforce this idea of consumerism and buying things. And I guess like a huge part of reducing your impact would simply be like people buying less stuff. Like how do you find reconciling that and then like trying to make the business more sustainable?
Great question, absolutely. And this is what keeps me up at night mostly, is personally, how do I square that circle of, to Jake's point, it's about growth, growth, growth. And business is business. Business is there to sell more, to return dividends to shareholders, to increase their profit. And that is definitely something I personally struggle with. I think the reason I've chosen the food sector is not only because it's a third of all greenhouse gas emissions, it consumes 70% of all water resources, and it's the sector that's the biggest driver of biodiversity, so it can have a massive impact. But it's also because food is something we all need. So that kind of growth piece, yes, maybe we don't all need to eat more Kit Kats every day, but the population is growing, people do need to eat. So I feel a little bit more comfortable with the food sector as a kind of growth vehicle. I think the other thing that is really powerful for me is I talk a lot internally about regenerative growth. So it's not just growth to earn more money to pay more shareholders. It's about growth that fuels us earning trust so that we sell more with consumers, so that we can reinvest more to have a bigger impact. And once you start changing that business model, that it's about, because to the point of Jake as well, if you don't have a budget, you can't drive change. And I only have a budget to do more things if the business does well. So for me, that definitely helps. I think the other big thing that's something to think about with a business, and this is definitely true of Nestle, and it's something I've really woken the business up to, is if nature collapses, we do not have a business. And when the board start hearing that and being like, what? What do you mean? It's like, if we cannot source wheat from East Anglia or cocoa from Côte d'Ivoire or coffee from Asia, we don't have a product to sell. We don't have a business. And of course, we all saw the summer, not this summer, the summer before, where it was 40 degrees, harvests were crashing. That was a massive wake-up call for businesses like mine, that if we don't build resilient supply chains, we don't invest in land, we don't work with farmers, and we don't protect nature, we fundamentally do not have a business. And for Nestle, we've been around for 155 years, and we want to be around for 155 more. And we won't unless we protect nature and we tackle climate change.
Great answer. Thank you. You have to walk to the front, and then there's a person over there, but we'll do next.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here. This is really interesting to hear each of your little spiels. I have another question for you. I forget your last name, Emma. I hope that's okay. I'm vaguely aware of a few lawsuits against Nestle, specifically regarding your impact on plastic pollution. This might also be a similar scenario for Coke. And I would be really interested to hear how your companies are thinking about the threats of climate litigation, as well as human rights litigation, which I also think there have been some court cases related to that with Nestle. And more broadly, how are you in your role, not just looking at those kinds of forward-looking responsibilities that your company might have, but also your obligations to redress historical harms?
Great question. And Jake, you can probably talk about this from a Coke point of view as well. This is another kind of really key driver that we use as...
Throw me the pass.
Similar businesses. It's for me as a sustainability person, it's a really important driver that I use when I talk to the board to say, look, there's real threat of being fined and of being sued. That also has a huge threat of company reputation and trust, which is such an important metric for businesses. If we're not trusted by consumers, again, that's a massive impact. So these things are really important. They're about holding businesses to account. They're about advancing the cause. The case you're referring to is very recent. It was filed on Monday against a few big businesses, Nestle included, about claims on plastic water bottles for being 100% recyclable and 100% recycled. These are really, really complex value chains, and it's something we're committed to. We've committed to all our boxed and water bottles coming from recycled plastic. Getting hold of recycled plastic, particularly in the UK, is incredibly complicated, partly because our infrastructure is so poor in the UK. We all know recycling rates are only about 15 to 16%, so it's really of what actually gets recycled. So there's a huge amount that we need to do to work with government to ensure that those plastic going into the system, we can get it back. It's also really, really challenging for us as a food business because we need to get high quality recycled material that can obviously be used for products that are going to be consumed by humans. This isn't about the fashion industry can use quite low grade recycled material because it's going into clothing. It doesn't have to be food safe. So there's a huge number of complexities. So that particular case is live. There's a lot of work going on to demonstrate how we are collecting material, a lot of advocacy to governments to say, look, we can't do this alone. We cannot get the material back unless the infrastructure exists. So it's really challenging. But yeah, it's a great question. Jake, I don't know if you've got anything to add from a...
I do occasionally lecture on plastics and ocean plastics. I tried to do something around ocean plastics when I was at Coca-Cola. I'm not a spokesman for Coke. I don't know where Coke is at the moment, but Coca-Cola has always believed in recycling. So as a member of Greenpeace and Coca-Cola at the same time, too often the argument is at the extremes, and there's often a missed, nuanced answer. Because often people define that plastics as the problem, but actually plastics in the ocean is the problem, plastics in landfill is a problem, and litter is a problem. But plastic's actually very low carbon, and some of the alternatives to plastic, like compostable stuff, is kind of just a disaster and actually have a higher carbon footprint, and it just screws up the recycling system. So we need alternatives. Many companies have externalized the harms. You can look at returnable, refillable glass in the Philippines, in China, and in a whole number of countries, and it's gone down, whereas one-way plastic has gone up, because that's great for shareholder profit, because they let society bring that packaging back. And society, it's mismanaged plastic waste, of which a lot of it, particularly in Asia and parts of Africa, but also in Europe and the UK, we are not managing our waste. And the problem is plastic is very low value. It's also very low cost, whatever. And we need to, Coke is known for ages, deposit systems work, but ultimately we have, as a society, need to do something with our waste in general. Okay. So, and I've been on a panorama program about Coca-Cola's 100 billion plastic bottle problem. Nobody from Coke ever shows up. And then there's another one coming out soon. They invited to be on it, but again, I decided this time I'm not going to do it. I don't want to be, an apologist for Coke. Coca-Cola has to go, in front of people. It might be career limiting to do that, but you've got to talk to people. And so I would go out and talk at universities about, when I was at Coke, about plastics and stuff like that. So society, Coke has said, we're already paying our packaging recovering note, but, it gets really complicated. But essentially, we need to demand more of... We don't even have a national recycling strategy in the UK. What a joke. So
there's a job for people.
There we are.
Right, there's a question there. And while Chris moves across, because I noticed as Abel and Cole recently said, well, we'll deliver you milk we used to deliver you milk in glass bottles, but now we've worked out plastic bottles that we can recycle and wash, and we're going to use plastic, even though you wouldn't expect that, because it just is so much less energy to drive the stuff around. Glass is really heavy, and it's taking
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable. And then when people throw the wrong colour in the recycling thing, you can't use any of it. And lots of plastic gets recycled as
I think in
hangers.
sustainability, one of the most common answers is it depends.
Ah.
So you can ask about, is it better to do this and this? The answer is always it depends. And that's why it's so important to look at the context, because what's better here, sometimes in the UK, given the infrastructure we've got, is not better somewhere else in the world. So it's, and particularly for a business like mine that is based in 188 countries and we move products around the world, it makes it incredibly complex to design a one solution that is appropriate in all areas. So there's lots of work to be done, everybody.
Well, that's good. Work to be done. Yes.
Thank you all for giving us such a varied view of what a career could look like in this field. My question's sort of related to the point you've just made. So both when I worked in sustainability consulting and now as a data science master's student, I've dealt with the frustrations of sustainability data and the lack of it. So it would be amazing to hear about some of the most creative solutions you've seen or found. Thank you.
Laurence, do you want to take that?
Yeah, look, it's an absolutely superb question. And, you know, when I do consulting work for companies, I tell them a couple of things. The first is that they need to be comparing like on like. Companies are very, very good at coming up with different stories. You know, this year, 20% of our employees volunteered time, and, you know, our carbon emissions have gone down by 12% in scope 2, whatever the case is. So I think comparing like on like is really, really critical. Companies need to be disclosing far more than just the mandatory. And companies with a strong sustainability culture are saying, look, here we are, we're not perfect, here we are in all our glory, you know, take us apart and see what we're doing well and what we're not. The third is that top companies are using science-based targets. They're reporting against rigorous metrics and certification schemes, and they're making sure that what they're doing is actually scientifically validated, again, rather than just plucking numbers from thin air. I think you know, greenwashing is rife. There's a lot of methodologies that underpin sustainability data that are either non-methodologies or they're hazy at best. So all of you, with the training that you're getting now, need to be able to go out there with a really sharp eye and call out what is good and what is not. There's an overwhelming amount of sustainability information, and a great skill in being a sustainability professional is being able to consolidate that information and make sense of it, use it to make good quality decisions, and also answer those it depends questions. Look at those second and third order consequences of decisions. Look at a decision, take it to its logical conclusion and see what the end point looks like. So it's a really powerful question. I wonder if my esteemed colleagues might like to build on that.
I think you've nailed it. They're absolutely the key points. I think the challenge with sustainability as well is it's evolving day by day in terms of the information we need, the insights, the science evolves, the issues evolve. So what we're looking at today is different to the issues we were looking at tomorrow. So it's carbon is one of the key currencies. I think that we can compare like with like because there are platforms like the Science Based Targets Initiative that have set methods. Carbon is the same whether you emit a ton here or a ton on the other side of the world, or it's a ton from a fossil fuel car, or it's a ton coming from a forest. We have good metrics now we can compare. Water, different story. It depends where it is, it depends if it's a water scarce area, if you've got too much water, too little water, water quality. It's a really, really complex issue that when you're looking at it as a company is very difficult to ascertain where you do different work. Biodiversity, even more complicated. What are we even talking about? No one yet really knows what does being nature positive mean. Is that adding a few more orangutans over there? Is that saving the bees over here? Is it... So some of these new issues are becoming incredibly complicated. I think the key thing is absolutely it's about disclosure. So we are doing our best to report as much as we can, both mandatory and voluntary. It's not always perfect. We're learning as we go, which is a challenge because then we'll get called out if we did something that the method has changed, but absolutely we need to keep doing that. We need to work together. And particularly this is where big businesses and small businesses can come together to say, how do we evolve? I mean, that's why it's really difficult for companies at the moment to have carbon footprints on products, or even broader than that, just kind of sustainability footprints on products where we would talk about land, carbon, biodiversity, water, whatever the metrics we're looking at, because it's so difficult to get that information. So data, if I had £1 for sometimes the person said data to me, I'd be a very rich woman, because it is the key area. So anyone that has data skills, that's going to be gold dust in this field going forward.
Let me just make a quick follow-up to that, because it's getting too exciting. But data is super important. I do carbon footprinting, and I do it basically everything down to the biscuits. Like beyond, morally, everything goes in, including the pension, because the pension industry has a higher carbon footprint than the whole of the United Kingdom. So if your company says, oh, look at us, we're very green, but the pension's still invested in fossil fuels, I don't think so. It's probably maybe a third of your whole carbon footprint. Anyway, so the thing is, we do need data, we need transparency, we need to hold businesses and government and everybody to account, but measurement didn't change anything. It's only what you do with the data. I mean, a lot of it is about compliance and reporting, and if you're head of sustainability for a big company, you have to do it. I never read Coca-Cola's sustainability brochure to the end in my whole life. It's way too long and not very engaging. It's only when you do something with the data that something changed and happened. So, it has to be an initiative, and so people, if you see a carbon footprint and a water for a minute, it's just, I don't know. The brand needs to solve that, or the company or the government needs to solve that problem for you and make life easy. A product needs to do its core functional proposition first. If it's an eco detergent, it's probably a bit rubbish. I don't want that one. But you want your brand you already buy to be more sustainable. So if it cleans whiter than white and it's sustainable, fantastic. And if everybody washed at 30 degrees, if all our customers washed at 30 degrees, look what we could achieve together. Amazing.
One less nuclear power station. Right, now I'm feeling overwhelmed by the work. There's Chris, can you go to the back there, please? A couple of people, and then we'll come to you at the front, sir.
Thanks. I have a question for Dr. Keller. From an organizational standpoint, how is sustainability embedded at Nestle, and how far away is your team from ultimate decision makers? Mostly interested in how you can actually affect change and what major challenges you faced with that.
Brilliant. Yeah, and this is something I've been working on in the last couple of years since I joined Nestle, recognizing that I had a voice with the board, and I would sit with them often and highlight the issues and where we were, and look at where are we today and where do we want to get to and how are we going to get there. But making change happen is hard. So the most significant intervention we've started to do is all of my senior leadership, my board, have a bonusable target linked to sustainability. That is an incentive, that motivates people. 20% of their bonus driven by sustainability, they're going to make it happen. They're going to push it down their teams because they want to get their financial reward at the end of it. And this is something you're seeing everywhere. Tesco's senior executives have 20% of their bonus linked to their main commitment on food waste, which is to get to 50% less food waste by 2030. It's starting to drive change. You're seeing innovations come out, Tesco investing in a whole range of things. So when you start to link it to personal motivations, you really start to get that impact.
Self-interest is a very powerful tool. There's another question down there, Chris, and then we'll come up to this gentleman here.
I have a very general question for all the panelists. Working in sustainability now and having the knowledge of the field, what is one skill or knowledge that you wish you had built when you were younger to help you in your current job?
Very good question.
I already did build that skill. And I would suggest, I didn't say I was any good at it, but the point is, whatever you do, you need to sell. And the best skill in selling is listening, which is why I call my company Empathy Sustainability. You need to listen to the needs and requirements of the person. If you can't sell your idea, if you can't sell why we should do more on sustainability, if you can't divert the company or the government's or the NGO's resources to the initiative which you think is important, then, and facts have not worked to save the planet. We've got lots of facts. So, I can do another talk on communication and behavior change. It's compelling stories which speak to people's core narratives when you're talking to normal people. But of course you have to be evidence, but you've got to sell. I would say you've got to learn how to present and sell and engage people to come with you on the journey. Otherwise the board isn't going to move.
Brilliant. That, of course, for the undergraduates here is the tutorial system writ large. Collect information, present and defend it twice a week, 24 weeks a year, etc.
I'd echo that. I think it's communication skills. I see my job often as being a constructive disruptor. So it's about getting into different parts of the business and trying to disrupt, because sustainability is about business transformation. We've got massive, wicked problems that we're trying to solve here. And we're not going to do that with incremental change. We've got to look at the big ticket items. We've got to really be bold. We've got to take risks and do things differently. And getting a business to do that, a government to do that, even an NGO to do that is hard. So my job is often to go in, disrupt, but constructively. Bring people with me using facts for those that are hardline, they like a spreadsheet, where's the fact, where's the number, where's the data, but also using emotion. Why are we doing this? This is for the future of your children. This is for the future of your business. This is for whatever it might be. And you've got to be able to present all of that and be a bit of a chameleon in sustainability, because my day job, I will be sitting in the morning with government officials talking about a very boring piece of policy and how we get the clauses written right that's going to drive change. Then I'm sitting with a business leader that's making a decision about the Kit Kat of the future and where to invest, and I've got to convince them to do something differently. Then I'm visiting a farm in the afternoon who I'm asking to leave their very expensive plough in their shed and start to farm regeneratively. You've got to be able to talk to all those different stakeholders, constructively disrupt and encourage them to do something differently, and understand how I can then support them to do that.
The sustainability leaders that I most admire and the people I consider to be most successful have great levels of humility, of humbleness, of curiosity. They're often willing to admit that they're wrong. They come into a conversation rather than professing to have the answers, asking the right questions, and approach the world in sort of a softer, kinder, gentler way where they're listening rather than coming in all guns blazing. So I think if I'd known that sort of earlier in my career, that it's okay to not know the answers, it's okay to be a bit sort of softer and humbler and show more humility. I think it's a very, very powerful thing in being a sustainability leader.
Can I just say though, if you're not a people person, don't worry about it. There's still a role for you. Somebody has to do the work.
Actually, I've got a supplementary in a way for that. Are you seeing applicants of this generation, so-called Gen Z, are they asking these sorts of questions now at interview and saying, actually, I don't want to work for you because you sit here, or I'm not going to go to this organisation? Are you seeing any of that?
Absolutely. In all areas of people applying to Nestle, it's becoming something that our graduates are asking for. And we're seeing people, I mean, there's lots of surveys out there as well now showing that people are actually willing to take a pay cut or to work for a company that has sustainability built in. So it's becoming almost a prerequisite for doing business. And I think that's great. So continue asking for that, because it encourages us as businesses. We want the best talent because we need the smartest minds, the bravest souls to help us change our business and be fit for the future. And if you come in with a sustainability mindset, wanting to work for business that is going to be a force for good, that is going to have a positive difference to people, planet and communities, then that only makes us have to work harder. So absolutely.
You should feel encouraged. Right, there's a question at the front, Chris, if you can.
This question may be more geared...
Just if you wait, then the people can... Everyone can.
This question may be more geared towards Dr. Keller and Professor Wainwright, from what you shared about your experience. I think in the broad nebulous space that is sustainability, there is a lot of value placed on defined subject matter expertise. At least that's been what I think I've seen. How, in your personal experiences, did you go about navigating your way to specific applied subject matter expertise, and how did you get comfortable with taking that final step into this is the niche area that I'm going to go into, such that I can have the highest leverage and not have concern that you're going to get pigeonholed? Does that make sense?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think you're probably in a much better position than I to do that. You know, my speciality was seafood and fishing, which I did my PhD on. I then sort of zoomed back out again and became interested more in the intersection of sustainability and human health and well-being. I think as a sustainability expert, you have to be able to make those connections and join dots. And you know, I personally think that this is the decade and the century of the generalist rather than the specialist. And I know that's a big call, but I think the ones who are going to lead us to this future we need to get to are the ones who can soar above like an eagle and see the connections and make those understand those interdependencies.
Otherwise, you have perverse and unintended consequences. People, you know, I hate plastic, I'm going to invent this. Sometimes it is an innovation which can take us forwards. Sometimes it creates a whole new set of problems. So you do need to look at things, you know, have systems thinking, holistic thinking. And so even if you do totally specialize, which we need, you've got to see, you know, how it is connected with everything else.
I think there's space for both, right? I think I also did my PhD on how do you get carbon data out of agricultural supply chains? And then I went to WWF and I specialised in tropical rainforests and how you stop deforestation. And then I did a number of different things. And I think I'm probably more of a generalist now. I can look at the whole picture, put the pieces together. But when I'm recruiting, I'm currently recruiting for a regenerative agriculture manager who will specialise in working with farmers. I'm recruiting for a circular economy specialist that can look at the new solutions to drive more circular systems. I've got packaging technologists that know all about the different types of plastic and packaging and how we change them from polylaminates to monolaminates and the recycling. So I need those specialists, and they can be incredibly senior in the business as well because there's big investment behind it. So I think we need both. It really depends on what your interest is and what you want to do. But I'd say dabble, try a bit of tapas, try different areas and see where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, career, yeah. Well, actually, Chris, if you just turn straight round, there's a person behind you. Yeah, no, go for it. Well, I mean, the career you choose now is not going to be the one you'll do in 10 years' time, or 20 years' time, or 30 years' time. So, because the world will have changed, technology will have changed, your personal position will have changed, you'll be interested in other things. So, you're not committing forever. You're doing this for a few years while it's kind of fun and interesting, and then something else is going to pop up. Or maybe it doesn't, and you might stay in a job for 25 years, or work for the same organisation for 25 years.
Just would say from personal experience, be careful about your first job, because so many jobs now look for not just academic excellence, which you've all got, but actually experience. And so you go start a job because you've just got offered it, but now you want to move to this, and you haven't got the right experience, and think, what the heck? So, yeah, and you can also get internships lots of places, because that's really helped. I've had several MBA students as interns, but actually the person who was the best ever worked at a cinema in Bristol. I mean, her dad was she was a daughter of a president of a bottler in China or whatever, and I was told, you will look after her or you're in trouble. But actually, she turned out to be categorically the best intern I ever had, and she then got a job in marine conservation in Hong Kong. But you can stop.
So interesting to hear about everyone's careers. The thing that I think strikes me, especially, like, I came straight from school to university, now I'm here, is balancing potentially obviously building a career takes time. Being able to have impact takes time. And maybe your advice to us is, I mean, personally, maybe to me, I can't speak for everyone, but potentially going in at these not very senior roles and where we can leverage change from those positions. Is it that we need to go for smaller corporations where I've spoken to a couple of my peers on my course who have actually moved from big corporations because they came in at the junior levels and that they couldn't have that impact that they wanted and craved and felt like was necessary, especially with the timescales we're facing with climate change. I do want to caveat that with the fact that I realise that right now is probably the best time to be able to make change, because I'm sure potentially earlier in your careers it was frustrating that you couldn't, and now it's great that that's here. So I'm not trying to say, oh, you have it easy and we don't, because that's not true, but from your perspective, what would you say to us?
I mean, you're all gonna, when you start your career, of course, we're gonna enter more junior and you climb, but I don't think that stops anyone having an impact. I mean, Greta always says it best, doesn't she? If you think you're not too small to make an impact, look at what she's done. But actually, the teams I leverage, and I think this is a point you made earlier, Jake, about building networks and coalitions. So I've got a group in Nestle called One World, who are my sort of 20-somethings, some of the most junior grads that come in, who are passionate about this agenda. They don't work in sustainability, they work in sales or IT or finance or HR, but they really care. And they formed a kind of guerrilla network called One World. I sponsor them, so they have that senior seat because I champion them. But they are incredible. They are, at the moment, doing reverse mentoring. So they are mentoring the CEO and his team and on sustainability, and it's incredible because the dynamic has shifted. The CEO is now the mentee and is sitting back listening to this 20-something being like, why did you make that decision? And I don't believe in this, and show me your strategy for when I'm going to be running the company and you're retired. And it's been an incredible dynamic because then those senior leaders come to me and be like, holy shit, Emma, we need to get on this. Like, how do we do this? And it's been really fascinating. At the same time, that group will host all staff events and they'll bring in external speakers and they'll do a really young, engaging, dynamic interview with people that all the staff will watch. So it doesn't matter what level you enter. If you've got a passion and a willingness to put your head above the parapet and say, I care and I want to do something, you can, and you can have an impact.
And it's not just Nestle. I wrote a piece for the FT about a year ago around recruiting Gen Z, and I interviewed people at Siemens and at HarperCollins and in a law firm, and all of them saying, we have cohorts of young people, of the 20-year-old somethings, and they're forming groups themselves, they want to be heard, and we want to hear them, because they are our customers of the future, they are part of the organization. So it's not 30 years ago when I joined and stay in your box and, you work 9 to 5, do your job, go home. It's not like that anymore in the progressive organizations.
I think it's a good question when you're at interview to, have you any questions for us? Actually ask them, because I would go, it doesn't matter the size of the company, but I do think it does matter that they're going to invest in you. Yep. That's a dynamic company. I mean, small startup, if it's really going places and it's got no money, you've still got to be excited by that, and they've got to invest in you as a person and your own training and all that kind of stuff. And then if you because there's no silver bullet to this whole subject. We need everybody to do everything.
Let's take, now they're opening up. We are going to have drinks afterwards, so you'll be able to continue the conversation. We've just got a couple more minutes, and then there's over there, and then there's one more just behind you, Chris. But yes, please.
Hi, so we've had quite a lot of advice for young people. What about jaded old people looking for a career change? So I did degree in environmental science, PhD in air quality from commercial composting facilities, and then have ended up working in infectious diseases for quite a long while. Now working in a lab, do as much as we can to reduce plastic waste, etc., green the lab. But obviously opportunities to go back and get more education are now limited because of outside work, money, financial responsibilities. And I had to do as much as I can alongside my paid for job. So is there any tips or advice on accessing other ways to get this education to bring me back up to date after years working in other fields? And how to go about this?
Really good question. And I don't think there is certainly it's something I don't look at, as I say, I'm recruiting at the moment. I don't look at age or it's about what can you bring. And actually I've had some really interesting applications, and I will always interview some wild cards who don't have the kind of typical background I might be looking for, because they can sometimes bring the most innovative thinking and life experience to the role. So I'd say absolutely apply. Email the people on LinkedIn and say, could I have a chat to understand what you're looking for and how I can fit in? There isn't a one size fits all. There isn't a particular path or a set of qualifications you need. And any good business will have training programs internally that they will help you to do. So I'd say don't hold back, absolutely apply, reach out, have a chat with people. Yeah.
It's a good time to get a job in sustainability. It has kicked off. And the UK legally has a legal obligation to cut carbon emissions by 78% by 2035 and net zero by 2050. If you want to supply the British government, you have to have a net zero strategy. So companies are out playing catch up. So I would question whether you actually do need any more education. You seem to have a lot already. And I think there are lots of companies that would,
Bite your hand off.
good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to wrap up by asking each of the panelists here to recommend a resource, a book, a podcast, whatever, that would be helpful for all of us to learn from.
I'll go. Professor Robert Strand's work at the University of California, Berkeley, he's a remarkable academic. He looks at the Nordic countries as being leaders when it comes to sustainability. Nordic businesses, whether it be Carlsberg, Maersk, Novo Nordisk, IKEA, these companies are leading the world in their sustainability principles and practices, and his research is looking at that. I think it's fascinating to see how these people have built careers and how these companies are doing extraordinarily well. The second person I recommend would be Jeffrey Pfeffer's work at Stanford, his work on leadership, on power, looking at what it takes to actually bring about change in a workplace. And some of these things that are quite shocking and surprising will be very, very interesting to you to see when the rubber hits the road, what it actually takes to bring about change within organisations.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll give you a podcast. There's a great podcast called Outrage and Optimism. Obviously some nods with Christiana Figueres and others. It's a really fantastic way of keeping abreast of what's going on. They have nice discussions. They bring in great speakers. Christiana Figueres was the leader of the Paris Agreement, basically, for 1.5, and is an incredible woman, and yeah, highly recommend it. Book-wise, the author escapes me at the moment, but it's called Ministry for the Future, and it's a brilliant book. Yeah, see lots of nods as well. Also, Paul Polman's book on net positive is a very good one to read from a kind of business point of view. So yeah, they're some of my favourites. And on LinkedIn, actually, if you follow Mike Barry, he was 20 years as the director of Plan A at Marks and Spencer's, back when it wasn't cool to be doing sustainability. And he now does a lot of work with a lot of businesses. But he's a great person to follow on LinkedIn because he posts lots of different resources. So good kind of for osmosis of knowledge.
I tend not to read sustainability books because I've been doing it all day, and the last thing I can do is to, because most say, hey, we're all going to die, we're screwed at the beginning before they get to the good bit. Like, I've had enough. There is, I did read the net positive one from Mike Barry here because it's got positive in it. Also Kate Rayworth, who does Dana Economics, that was really interesting. She's a visiting researcher here at the School of Geography. But the one thing I would do, completely free, is look up Oxford Networks for the Environment, called ONE, and go to every lecture you can on any subject on sustainability here at Oxford University. You can go to Ecosystem Services, there's the Energy Colloquia, that most of them at School of Geography, but also here at Oxford Martin School. I mean, even this last week we had a couple of really great lectures here in this room. And so there's such a massive resource, and don't just go to I decided not just to go to things that were interesting to me, because you can even learn methodology, you'll learn something else as well, so just go to a lot of stuff.
Right, I know what I'll be doing next on books and podcasts, that's great. Just before we go to drinks, can I ask us all to thank our great panellists?